Well, it's finally happened. Bernie Sanders has announced his run for 2020. So I am going to go over a lot here. I'm going to show you a couple videos. I'm going to go over what his campaign is going to be about. I'm going to show you some reaction from Twitter. So it's got a little bit of everything. So let's start with Bernie Sanders and the campaign video that he launched with.
Real change never takes place from the top on down, but always from the bottom on up.
Bernie Sanders' healthcare for all idea is gaining steam.
Free tuition, free college tuition, free tuition champion, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders added, the greatest threat to national security is climate change.
The future of our planet is at stake.
Sanders taking on Amazon.
Bernie Sanders has been consistent hammering about income inequality.
Nobody in America works 40 hours a week, should be living in poverty. So our economy is rigged. We have a campaign finance system which is corrupt.
Sanders leading the charge to stop war against Yemen.
The first time ever the Senate has voted to end an unauthorized war.
The fight against injustice has been the work of his life.
Jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. We are not going to retreat on women's rights.
Sanders pushing a bold agenda that includes protecting DACA recipients and comprehensive immigration reform.
You don't rip little children away from the arms of their mother.
A major announcement from Amazon. Amazon will raise its minimum wage to $15 an hour. 350,000 workers.
Thousands of workers at Disney World will get raises.
It's a victory for Bernie Sanders.
It's a victory for all workers. Brothers and sisters, we have a lot of work in front of us. If we are prepared to stand together, there is no end to what the great people of our nation can accomplish.
So there you go. It's almost hard to know what to say. Bernie actually cares. He actually has a platform. He has detailed specifics on what he wants to do. He already has specifics on the issues that he has supported and the various bills that he's brought up. Bernie Sanders is the real deal. This is the guy. So I'm not even going to pretend to be, I'm going to... Let's all wait and see who the other candidates are. No, let's be real here. There's nobody that even exists in America that can match up to Bernie Sanders. So Bernie Sanders, based on his record, on his history of fighting for these issues for his entire career, 40, 50 years, he's been fighting for these issues, fighting for real people. There is no comparison at all to anybody. He is, in my opinion, the only choice for 2020. Yes, of course, if you want to rank the other ones, we can do that. But in terms of who is the front runner, who should be the nominee for the Democrats in 2020, it's obviously Bernie Sanders. Now, let me go over some of the platform here. So there was a lot he mentioned in that video, but here's a tweet from Jeff Stein of the Washington Post. So per Sanders Aides, his agenda for 2020 is Medicare for all, Green New Deal / climate, $15 minimum wage, criminal justice reform, free college, break up biggest banks, gender pay equity, pay to leave, lower drug prices, expand Social Security, save unions, the DREAM Act. Also mentioned background checks on assault weapons ban, affordable housing, new infrastructure, opposing military-industrial complex, criminal justice plan includes legalize weed, abolish private prisons, end cash bail, major police department reform. So there is more detail by far than any other candidate in the race so far. And it's not surprising. We already know where Bernie sits on all of these issues. He's not one of these politicians that tries to, change his message depending on the audience. No, Bernie Sanders is Bernie Sanders. He fights for issues that he cares about. He fights for issues that the vast majority of people in America support. So when you look at actual polling on these issues, on the vast majority of them, like Medicare for all, like getting big money out of politics, like raising taxes on multinational corporations and the wealthy, the vast majority of Americans support these policies. He is a representative of all of us. Now, I also want to show, so after this announcement, there's a few tweets here I want to go over. So after this announcement, he already raised more money than anybody else in the race. So Bernie has raised money from 42,000 donors in roughly 4 hours, besting Harris's 24-hour total. So this is what a real grassroots support looks like. This is what a candidate built on grassroots donations and volunteers, this is what it looks like. Bernie Sanders, his support, I mean, you'll see people, if you're on Twitter a lot like I am, you'll see you'll see people talk about how, oh, Bernie Sanders has, sure, he has some support on Twitter. He has a lot of, Bernie bros, a lot of bots on Twitter, but he doesn't have any real support. All you have to do, even before this, is look at a poll and see that Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the country. But apart from that, look at the actual data now. Now that he has launched, he has more donors by far than anybody else immediately after his announcement. He has already raised more money than anybody else the same day of his announcement. So Bernie Sanders, his support is real. This is the support that's going to carry him through and I think will lead him to a victory in 2020. Now, going off of that, I mean, I am so glad he's using this this slogan for his campaign, because this is what Bernie Sanders has always been about. So you'll see this on his Facebook, on his Twitter, not me, us, BernieSanders.com. That's who Bernie Sanders is. Bernie Sanders is not a guy that likes to brag or really ever brags. I read a great piece from Sean King that he actually wrote over the summer about Bernie's history on racial issues and how he has fought there are aspects of his past that people don't even know about. I didn't know about them. Somebody that is an avid supporter of Bernie Sanders. There are things that Bernie did that I did not even know about. So I'm going to link to that Sean King piece below my video so you can read through it, because you will learn a lot about this man who, this is the thing, when you have someone who doesn't actually, he's not in this for himself. We are so used to seeing politicians get into politics for themselves. Bernie Sanders, the reason why nobody really heard of him until 2016 is because he has been fighting for these issues that the mainstream press doesn't want to cover. So when he began to actually run and force the media to give him a national profile by running against Hillary Clinton in 2016, people actually saw this message and he became popular. But he has been on these issues his entire career because he actually cares, and he has never been in this for himself. He's always been in this to lift up other people. Now, let me show you some other reactions here from Twitter. So this is a tweet from the executive director at Justice Democrats, Alexandra Rojas, who tweeted out, "There is no question that I would not be involved in politics, let alone running Justice Dems, if it wasn't for Bernie Sanders in 2016. I will always be so thankful to Bernie for inspiring me and thousands of other everyday people to believe in a political revolution." Now, Justice Democrats is the group that lifted up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and others to be able to raise the profile in the ability to raise money for their campaigns, for their primary races in the Democratic primary, and then eventually win their various seats in 2018. So Justice Democrats is essentially an offshoot of the Bernie Sanders idea of running campaigns for the people on grassroots donations. Justice Democrats candidates don't take any corporate money. These are grassroots run campaigns on issues that people care about, like the entire platform that Bernie Sanders has, like Medicare for All and other issues. So this is a group much like Our Revolution that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Bernie Sanders' run in 2016. Now, let me show you some other reactions. So Sean King, he tweeted out, "If you hate Bernie Sanders, frankly, it says a lot more about you than it does about him. He's a kind, consistent, reliable man who has dedicated his life to public service and standing up against the machines of power." This tweet from Abdul El-Sayed, who's a professor, activist, doctor, and former Democratic candidate in the Michigan gubernatorial primary for governor, said, quote, "Glad he's in. No one has contributed more to our public policy conversation on the left since 2016 than he has. Time for a vigorous, policy-oriented primary." And this from Communications Director of Justice Democrats, Waleed Shahid. Bernie Sanders' single-payer Medicare for All bill in 2013, 0 co-sponsors. Bernie's bill in 2017, 16 co-sponsors, including nearly every Democratic presidential contender. The center of energy in the Democratic Party wouldn't be where it is today without his 2016 campaign. So a lot of this, I assume, is obvious to most people watching this video, but there are people out there that don't understand that the reason we are even talking about issues like Medicare for All, like getting big money out of politics, like raising taxes, is because of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders brought these issues to light in the mainstream press and forced the press to actually begin covering these issues. And the popularity of policy positions like Medicare for All have raised drastically because of Bernie and his ability to communicate why this is so important. So, for example, I mean, in 2016, Bernie really raised the profile of Medicare for All by educating people on the fact that other countries, like my country, already have universal healthcare systems. Now, a lot of Americans, because a lot of American media is sort of self-contained, you don't look outside your borders, a lot of Americans don't know this, or didn't know this at the time. A lot of Americans don't understand how overrun their politics has been with big money interests, and that how that big money interest has dictated policy in Washington. So Bernie Sanders put a light on that and educated people on these issues. And it's the main reason a lot of these progressive issues are now so incredibly popular. Now, let me play just a short snippet of a 10-minute video that Bernie Sanders put out today, discussing in more detail on his campaign and his policy positions. But let me just show you a short clip of that.
Make no mistake about it. The powerful special interests in this country have unbelievable power, and they want to maintain the status quo. They have unlimited amounts of money to spend on campaigns and lobbying, and have huge influence over the media and political parties. The only way we will win this election and create a government and an economy that works for all is with a grassroots movement, the likes of which has never been seen in American history. They may have the money and the power. We have the people. That is why we need 1 million Americans who will commit themselves to this campaign.
You know, people ask me quite often online, why do you cover American politics if you're Canadian? One of the main reasons is Bernie Sanders. So I ran as a Green Party candidate in 2015 because largely because I was inspired by Bernie Sanders. Now, I know that may sound weird to Americans, but in Canada, we don't have politicians like this. We don't have inspiring figures. We just don't. I mean, it's sad to say, but we don't really have anybody like Bernie Sanders or AOC and others now that are beginning to come up in the system. But we don't have anybody like this. So having somebody actually truly represent the best interests of the people, to me, this is incredibly inspiring. Now, his line here, they have the money and power. We have the people. That's it. I mean, that's what this is about. That's what Bernie Sanders is about. That's why he is by far the front runner in this race, because he represents the people against the establishment. There is no wavering on any issues that may impact corporations negatively. No, there's no going, oh, well, Medicare for All is maybe too far, or we have to protect private insurance. No, none of that shit. Bernie Sanders is for the people. You either like it or you don't. So if you are a very wealthy individual who's made a lot of money off of screwing people, maybe you're a billionaire and you don't like Bernie Sanders because he's gonna raise your taxes, Bernie doesn't care. Bernie doesn't want your vote. Bernie wants the votes of the people that want to support these policies, the vast majority of people that would benefit from policies like Medicare for All. So Bernie Sanders is about the people and has always been about the people. That's why he is the front runner in this race. And when you look at what he's done, I mean, just this year and last year, you have the Stop Bezos Act, the Medicare for All Act, an act to expand Social Security, Raise the Wage Act, an act to lower prescription drug prices. I mean, here's a guy who has the pieces in place to push a real movement on actual issues that will benefit people's lives. This is somebody that really cares. Again, he is not in this for himself. He has never been in this for himself. That's why almost none of us knew his name until several years ago. It's because Bernie Sanders has always been in this for the people. He never wanted the fame. He never wanted the attention. But now that he is clearly the only person, I think, in this race that can actually represent people, actually fight for people in Washington, if he becomes president and has that power, I mean, there's just no other option. Bernie Sanders is the one.